Here we go. All right, so yeah, last week, ton of news and obviously had a large impact, on how everything did with the market. So let's just take a look this week. Again, we've got some significant events. We've got FOMC coming on Wednesday at 2 p.m. That's when it starts on 2:30. So Wednesday is going to be an interesting day. I mean, that's kind of in the afternoon, so we should get some movement, but it is going to be kind of after the session happens. So we'll see how that affects kind of going into Thursday. And then other than that, I mean, we don't have much USD news. I mean, we have the guy of all guys speaking at 2 p.m. on Friday to close out the week.
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward this week. I mean, unless something super unexpected happens, obviously that's always a possibility, but we're made aware of the high impact news, so don't trade, for a couple hours around that, and you should be all right. But yeah, not too bad compared to last week. It's looking like.
Yeah, I mean, what else do we have? We have some GBP, Euro. It's a lot of GBP and Euro news, some CAD, CPI news, which shouldn't be anything too crazy. It looks like
Positive forecast here.
Yeah. So it's supposed to previous 2.5. Yeah, I mean, this is obviously going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, actual or greater than the forecast is good. So yeah, that they're expecting it to be pretty positive. Now, if that number comes in at like 1% or 2%, which is worse than the previous and way worse than the forecast, then you'll see short-term, bearishness. You won't see a good reaction following that. But yeah, this is why you always, we always recommend avoid super impact news because, you never really know for sure what's going to happen. There's an expectation, and if the report hits it, then you'll get a reaction or not. It's tricky stuff.
For y'all that are just joining, now that we got started, we are going to do a giveaway. So we're going to give away one 10K challenge, funded trader challenge. All you got to do is post on your IG story, tag Forex League. Funded trader Instagram is currently down, so it doesn't matter if you tag that, but tag Forex League in there. We'll repost and we'll pick one winner after the session is over. So just want to touch on some fundamentals. If you guys aren't looking at fundamentals, you definitely should start, because once you get funded, whether it's with funded trader or with FTMO, you guys are going to want to be aware as to what's going on, because both firms have rules around the news. So you definitely want to trade around that. I see a few people just joined. If you guys joined for the first time, basically this session is going to be Nick and myself. We're going to run through all of our analyses for the week. We're mainly just talking about swing trading, so we're not going to be looking at anything really below the 4-hour time frame, because that's just how we look at things. But yeah, if you guys have questions during the session, feel free to write in the chat. So that being said, I'm gonna hand it over to Nick and he's gonna get started.
Yeah, let's kick it off like we always do. We're gonna jump through DXY and then run through a bunch of tradable pairs. I'm gonna wrap it up with gold, and then Andrew's gonna dive into his pairs and cover what he's looking at for the week. So guys, there's actually a method that we follow. We're swing traders. We're looking for trends. We're looking to ride the trends, trying to find the highest probability setups. So there's a method that we've developed for this. And I always like to start on the daily time frame, clear up the drawing tools, and just look at the naked chart for a second. Right? All that I want to gather from the daily time frame is the overall trend. I want to see where price action has been moving the last few months. And the daily time frame really shows that well. Right? So we can go back all the way to here, February 2020, and we could see very clearly that there's strong characteristics of a bullish trend. Higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, and so on and so on. So very clearly this is bullish, right? So we know the dollar's been bullish for quite a while. That's kind of been, wreaking havoc on the market. A lot of the USD pairs have been, reacting pretty significantly just based on the dollar just inevitably pushing higher and higher. Okay, so with that, we're aware of the overall trend. Now we'll drop to the 4-hour and see what's going on this time frame. So for me, I focus on the 4-hour pretty specifically because this is what's going to show me, the potential movement for the week ahead. So remember, I'm a swing trader. I like to hold trades for 2 to 3 days, somewhere in that range, and this is the time frame that highlights that best for me. So we know we're overall bullish. What's going on here on the 4-hour? We did push up recently, huge bullish volume, and now we're consolidating just over the support level, right? 1095. It was resistance. We pushed above it. Now we're consolidating. Now this could just be, a general range. waiting for, conviction from either the bulls or bears to kick in, or this could be a bit of a flag pattern, right? Where there's a huge, flag pull, there's some consolidation, and then a continuation is, to follow. So that's one possibility. I'm not going to call it yet. I'm not going to try and predict anything because it can bounce or it could break lower, right? So we need to just follow price action and react accordingly. Now we're not actually trading this. Again, we use this information on, the other pairs because DXY makes up for such a large percentage of trade. Once something is happening, on DXY or, a trend is, we committed to a trend, you're going to see that kind of take hold on other, pairs. So like AU is a good example. It shares an inverse correlation. If the DXY on the daily has been overall bullish, you better bet AU has been overall bearish. Now I don't look at DXY and say, oh, look, there's a bearish engulfing. Let's go over to AU. I'm seeing a bullish engulfing. We don't do it like that. It's not how I'm really using DXY. I use it more as an indicator to suggest the overall, trend and the direction of where we are headed. Okay, and then I'll just use that, again, like any other confirmation or any other indicator or tool. Okay, so this is the likelihood we're either going to bounce right off 1095, push higher, which again is very likely. Dollar's been, pushing higher without really any rhyme or reason, just trending higher and higher. Or the opposite here. Let's say we finally get a break. DXY needs to cool down a little bit. We're going to see some more consolidation. This would be ideal if we broke 1095, started seeing characteristics of a bearish trend. So lower lows, lower highs below, broken levels, acting as new resistance, followed by a continuation. So this would be nice. This would say to me, all right, for this week, it's probably the dollar's probably going to be more bearish. And then I'll, again, take that into consideration on my other pairs. So this is what DXY is looking like. Again, just pretty much bullish. Need to see some reactions here. So be aware of that. Let's go over to AU, first tradable pair. And we're going to do the same thing. Go to the daily and just look at the naked price action. Right, just plain chart. All we need is the trend. And we could just follow price action, right? We fell off here. This is a huge drop. Let's start right here. Huge drop. We hit a lower low, pulled back, got a lower high, followed to a new low, pulled back, got a lower high, and now we're back at the prior low. So this is a generally bearish chart, right? And we have been for quite a while, all the way back here in April. We've been moving lower. Okay, and that lines up generally with what we were just looking at on DXY since February. Where was it? Since February, we're pretty much bullish on the dollar. AU shares an inverse correlation, so it's relatively bearish. Okay. So with that information, let's go to the 4-hour and just zoom in on what's going on for the week ahead. What can we see here on this time frame? So we have a nice bearish channel. I've highlighted that with trend lines. I won't really use these trend lines as support or resistance. It's more so just a visual aid to again highlight the trend. So overall bearish, right? We've been taking out these support levels. 0.685 was first, then it dropped to 0.67, pulled back, bounced off 0.685 again, back down to 0.67. So it's been respecting these zones while also moving lower. Now we're at the low. Right? You can see price actions resting right here, right at 0.67. So there's only really two ways it's going to react. Either it's going to bounce, meaning it's going to push up, or it's going to break. It's going to, inevitably continue the bearish trend. We'll look to get in on new structure, the next lower high, rejecting off 0.67, really acting as new resistance. That's what you want. You want price action to push into this level, really get denied, turn around, see some wick, see some rejection, and then see that conviction step in, bearish variations, 3 strong candles in a row, engulfing, evening stars, any sort of reversal pattern. That's really what you want to see at this area. So this would be a good setup. I went ahead and marked it up for you guys through the short tool on it. We're risking about 50 pips to get about 127 roughly. So just over 2.5 to 1. So if I'm risking 1%, I'm going to get 2.5% back. So not a bad trade. Just playing it zone to zone with a continuation of a trend. Right, pretty straightforward. Now, if it does bounce, let's talk about that for a second. If we fail to get the break, price action bounces now. We'll look for it to rally back into 0.685. And then we're going to look at the exact same thing up here, breaks or bounce. We're going to either break above or we're going to bounce off and then get another short opportunity from there. So really just need to wait, see which way it's going to go, and then we'll make our move. All right, that's AU. Let's go over to AJ. Same thing, guys. You guys should know the method by now, right? Daily time frame, naked chart. Let's just zoom out and then assess the trend. So on the daily, so for the past few months, what has price action been doing? been rallying for the most part. We can see that this is an upward chart, price action's moving up. And we could even see that in structure with a higher high here, higher low, higher high, higher low. We spent some time here. That's something to note. There's a bit of consolidation, but then we got another higher high. So we're not done moving higher, very clearly bullish. So now let's go to the 4-hour and come up with the two scenarios, see what's, in store for us for the week ahead. Let me just check chat real quick. Okay. Yeah, you got it. All right. So for the week ahead, 4-hour time frame, what's the likelihood and what's happening? So overall bullish, there was a nice break of this 95 zone here. Clear bullish channel, rallied right through it. Here was the higher high. Here was the higher low. Continuation, just absolutely beautiful. Another break and retest right here. So this was very bullish. We're getting higher lows all the way up to this point. And then this happened, right? Huge fall off, gigantic bearish candles appear, and it just starts taking out some levels. So we broke 97 first. So was this higher low, dropped to 96, came back for the lower high, confirmed the lower high. Look at that evening star, right? So we have a nice bullish candle, a little bit of a doji, and then good follow through on this bearish candle, right? Nice reversal right there on the 4-hour. Definitely some good setups on a lower time frame. But since that point, we've been bearish here on the 4-hour, right? So the real question is this 4-hour trend going to continue bearish, or will the daily trend kind of step in and catch price action here, pushing us up to the new high? So in order to find that out, we really need to see rejections at 96. So 96 support, this is kind of the make or break. We did kind of break below it. I'm not convinced yet. I need to see price action reject really hard now. See something like we saw here, a nice evening star, prime setup. Then we can enter on that. And then we have another, short scenario marked up here. This one's gonna, again, these numbers are gonna slightly vary depending on where price action actually kicks in. Something to note is I personally won't take a trade unless it's at least 2-to-1 risk reward. So if there's too much volume, rejecting 96 and your execution's down here, look at the risk reward. I won't take it unless it's 2-to-1, right? Just not worth it at that point. If that were to happen, we would just kind of push to the side, wait for another, a better setup to show. But if we do get a good setup here, we could have, well over a 2-to-1. Ideally, we'll risk, somewhere in the 40 pip range, 35 pip range to get around 90. Playing it zone to zone, just a simple continuation. We're not going to bite off more than we can chew and target all the way down here, right? We're finding a nice clean setup, at least, 2% like we were saying, and just playing it zone to zone, nice and simple. When price action gets down to 95 after this trade is completed, then we'll have another opportunity. It's going to break or bounce from that point, right? So there's no real need to just be targeting unrealistic, targets, beyond zones, just not making much sense. There's always another opportunity at a key zone. So that's one scenario, looking for that, continuation of the 4-hour bearish trend. Or if it bounces now, let's say it bounces off 96, this was more or less a fake out, price action rises back to 97. This would be the zone that we need to break above to really consider this full bullish again, right? So we have our two scenarios, just need to wait on this one, but it's looking good. Looking good right now. Let's move over to UJ. This one is still at the bottom of my watch list, but we're going to cover it anyway. It's pretty far from a scenario, any sort of trade option, but let's go to the daily to start. And what are we getting from this time frame, right? Just the overall trend. Very clearly, this is bullish as hell. This is almost a straight up chart. I mean, what angle is this at? This has got to be like, what, 45 degrees higher even? Just a crazy, crazy climb at a UJ here. But let's follow it, right? Higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs. Very clearly bullish, right? Moving much higher. Actually, a lack of structure. I would have liked to see maybe even 1 or 2 higher lows throughout this rally here. So very overextended. Let's get a closer look on the 4-hour. Here we are. This is the most recent rally. And I've kind of just marked it up here because this is still one move, right? I've thrown this trend line on it, just a supporting trend line, showing you guys the angle of this trend and how steeply it's been rallying, right? All of this is lack of structure, all in here. We've just been moving higher, taking out key zones. So 137 was the first zone that we broke above, rallied without a higher low, just, kept on, steamrolling higher here, into 145 finally. And now we've been seeing some struggle. So this is consolidation, right? We hit 145 at the top twice. We had a bunch of struggle down here, a little bit of a double bottom, and then price action's getting more narrow until, inevitably it's going to, break or pop or reverse or something. So really, there's not much to do on this. The likelihood is that this is going to keep rallying. There's nothing on this chart yet that says it's bearish. So the likelihood of this pushing higher into 145, it's there. And then we'll have to see if it's going to break above or it's going to reverse with a lot of, bearish energy. So I'm really not in favor of the, continuing bullish move, just because of how overextended it's been. I would much rather see price action fail now, push lower, get the first lower low we've seen in a while, followed by a lower high, and then we could start targeting, support levels from there. Because I mean, in my opinion, this thing's got quite a ways to pull back. The question really is just when that's going to happen. But we know we're not going to try and predict when it's going to fall. We're really just going to follow. So we're coming up with these two scenarios. And I mean, I'm telling you, there's nothing on this chart that's bearish yet. We know what we'd like to see, but really it's just straight bullishness at the moment. So yeah, again, UJ is really at the bottom of my watch list. Not really, too much else to say about that one. But let's jump over to EJ. A little bit more exciting of a setup here. Let's go to the daily time frame first. See what's been going on with this trend. All right, so for the past few months, we have been generally bullish. So let's go through it. We saw a little bit of consolidation here. We dipped lower to a low here, and then it rallied from that point. We got the higher high, higher low, higher high. Then there was a bit of a trend change in here, right? This was the higher low that got broken by a lower low, followed by a lower high. So this is a trend change in here. We went bearish for a brief moment, down to this here around 136, consolidated, got this lower high that we broke. So right at this point, we went back to bullish, and one little retest there, and then it just took off. So we are newly bullish. Let me just show you guys. Oh, it's actually going to draw these back on. Hold on. Oops. All right, there we go. All right, so overall bullish. Let's go to the 4-hour and see what's going on in this time frame. And again, guys, this is the time frame that kind of highlights the weekly move for me the best, as a swing trader. Right, this is just what is probably going to take a few days to play out on either of these scenarios, and that's really where I'm looking to, get in. Now, the good thing about the way we trade is these concepts can be adjusted for more like intraday stuff. You just have to change the time frame that you're considering trends on, right? Or daily or movement, whatever you're doing. So if you're trading more intraday, you'd look really on the 1 hour, consider 1 hour trends, and then utilize the 15-minute, maybe even lower for execution. Okay, the concepts are the same. It's pretty much universal. It's not like price actions on the 5-minute is moving so much more dramatically than the 4-hour on this particular pair. It's just how you adapt it. All right, so here on the 4-hour, we're overall bullish. We know this. We did rally, or we did start to find some struggle right around 144 resistance, where you guys are seeing this consolidation. And those of you guys that know your patterns, this is looking a bit like a head and shoulders, right? Left shoulder right here. This is the head. This would be the right shoulder, making this the neckline, right? So if this does play out and it does complete and prove to be, a head and shoulders, we're going to look to short after we get below 142 with the first lower high below, right? This neckline is forming pretty close to a key level. So I want to be safe that we see structure below that. If this really is a clear reversal pattern on the 4-hour, we should have no trouble seeing some lower highs below 142. And then we'll target lower, start targeting some support levels like 140, and then maybe even lower. We'll see. We'll have to reanalyze at that point. But we marked this one up. It's looking like a 2.5 to 1 risk reward. So not bad. Risking 60, looking to get 150. Okay, now let's say that fails. Let's say it doesn't form or it doesn't complete the head and shoulders. We don't break the neckline, and we really have no short opportunity. For us to consider this for longs or to see EJ as more bullish again, we really want to get above 144 and then see a higher low above, right? New structure above a key zone, which is what we failed to get over here, right? Price action rallied above. We did take out the level, right? It got above 144, but when it came back down, it failed to give us a higher low, at least a significant one, given the volume we just saw. If that bullish volume is really going to stick, it really should have bounced off this with a lot more follow through. And then look, it tried, saw a big wick, completely failed, huge engulfing, bringing price action back below 144. So that's really what we need to see now. We're not going to get faked out. We really want that higher low, and we'll enter on that conviction. Okay, so these are the two scenarios for EJ. Not bad either way it goes. I mean, I'm really hoping EJ doesn't just start consolidating for, the next couple of days, because that is a characteristic of EJ. Whatever it decides to do, it's really going to commit to it. So if it's going to rally, it's going to rally like crazy, like we kind of just been seeing, right here. If it's going to consolidate, it's going to consolidate a lot, right? Good amount of consolidation there or in here, a lot of choppiness, right? And then same goes for bearish. If it's going to be bearish, it's going to commit to being bearish and really just tank from there, right? This is the friend that does the 110% at every single thing they do, right? This is EJ. That's one of the characteristics of this pair. So yeah, that's EJ. Let's move over to gold. This one's looking pretty good too. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's zoom out to the daily time frame and just assess the trend. So gold, what's it been doing, right? Since we saw this consolidation here, we pushed up. This is the last bullish attempt before we turned bearish. So huge fall off here, right? Big momentum, established a lower low, came back up, formed a lower high, followed by a little bit of consolidation. Bearish momentum wasn't done, took us off to a new lower low, followed by a lower high, which lines up beautifully with this low here, right at 1800, and then rejected from there, continuing the overall bearish trend to a new lower low. So very clearly gold's been bearish. Let's go to the 4-hour, see what's been going on this time frame. What can we spot for the week ahead? Okay, so we threw some trend lines on this, obviously bearish, kind of just to, again, paint the picture, give you the visual. That's the only reason I use trend lines. And it's just showing that we're seeing really good structure, right? We saw a nice low, a little bit of consolidation, a little bit of choppiness, price action pulled back, got a lower high, and then tanked from there. So it just took a little bit, took a little bit of time to consolidate before, building up the energy to continue the push, to continue the trend. And then there we are. Got a new lower low below 1675. So we took this level out, but now we need to see if this zone's going to hold up. Right? Is it going to be a zone that's going to show us resistance, or we're going to reject from this level? If we can prove that, then it'll gain our confidence in entering short, right? On some nice bearish setups, good rejection, bearish variation, 3 strong candles in a row, evening star, like I was saying before. Anything like that, that'll give us that confidence. We'll look to enter on there, and we'll target down towards our negative 27% fib level. Right, we're risking about 120. So the pips are a little bit larger on gold for those of you guys that trade this. So we're risking 120 pips, looking to get about 450. So your percent risk per trade shouldn't really change, between pairs and commodities. If you're risking 1%, it's going to be 1% either way. Your stop loss is just going to be a little bit more or less, depending on what you're trading. And your lot size is going to be what fluctuates. But every time you take a trade, your percent risking, your percent gain should really be, within a range. Okay. Just define those risk management rules, and you should be good. That's the trick with gold. It's, a lot more pips. People really tend to get influenced by the amount of pips that they're seeing on the screen. Really, when it should just be focused on is like percent gain. All percentages. One of the few things we have control over, guys, is risk management. And if that's out of whack, then you really got no chance. So that's really the number one thing that we should be focusing on. All right, so that's a good setup that we got marked on gold. Looking for rejection from 1675, pretty simple. But we want to be aware of all potential scenarios, right? So what would we need to see to come to this chart, pull up gold and say, wow, it's looking more bullish here on the 4-hour, right? Price action would need to rally back into this range, right? Between these two zones where we saw price action struggle before. We want to get back into that zone and then see a higher low, see price action kind of establish a footing back up at these levels. That would be the first step, right? To us saying, okay, this is looking more bullish now. But yeah, a lot to prove before we can full on say that. So yeah, gold's looking pretty good. We'll be keeping this one high on the watch list. But yeah, that pretty much concludes my analysis, guys. Gold's the last one. I'll do a quick recap. Covered DXY, AU, AJ, UJ, EJ, and gold. This is recorded for those of you guys that joined late or are watching this on YouTube. And these are also posted in Telegram and Discord. Right? It's just the TradingView link. So if you click it, it'll pull it up and you guys will be able to see the live chart. So there'll be a little play button. You play it forward. You'll see which trade scenario price action followed and essentially how we did. The accuracy of these can be seen there. So yeah, I'm going to pass off to Angelo. Thank you guys. Pretty good week ahead though. stay patient, and yeah, work on your risk management. That's really it. That's the key.
All right, guys, good job, Nick, with the analysis. I see a bunch of people asking some questions up in the chat. We are gonna try to answer some of them. Someone said, why is the Zoom link not posted in lifetime members announcements? The link is posted in the Discord in the announcements channel. So I don't think we need to post it in the lifetime members one as well.
Yeah, I think Leroy, you might be confused with the members training sessions. Those are posted in the lifetime section, so only the members can see it. This is actually a free session. We posted on TFT and Forex League.
Yeah, this is just a free one we do every Sunday. Let's see.
It's the Blitz, baby.
It's the Blitz. That's it. And football's back, so it's actually the Sunday market Blitz. Let's go.
I know. I was just thinking that too. We need some NFL music.
Let's see. Yeah, so mainly people just saying thanks for the analysis. So good job. I'm gonna go and start with DXY. I saw one question around how to break down DXY. So we're gonna start off on the weekly time frame. DXY has just been dancing around this weekly resistance level over at 110 for about 3 weeks now. So if we zoom out, why is this zone actually here? Why do I have the zone marked? So pretty much the way that I draw my zones, very similar to how most other people do, is I just look for these indecision levels in the market where price has rejected or found support really like aggressively. So we can see here we have a ton of support at this level, ton of resistance in this area. So that's pretty much where I'm basing it. We can go even further back and see more resistance in this area and further back than that, but we don't really need to. And then based on that, we can start to look at where is price actually right now. We could see previously we have hit this level. So we're currently in an uptrend overall, but we're at this level, and this is definitely a very key level of resistance. Let me just zoom in a little bit. This is definitely a very key level of resistance that we are at. As you can see, we're forming these indecision candles at the top. So we have this like spinning top candle, another indecision candle from last week coming down to the 4-hour time frame. We were in this uptrend. We had broken into a downtrend. Last week, we had said that when the market opens, this is right where we're at. We're not looking to take any sells unless price came back up into this red zone and showed some type of rejection. As you can see with the news coming out at some point last week, we had this huge push to the upside, right? So this is probably like CPI or whatever. We pushed to the upside about 2%. So now we're back in the red zone right now, and we're starting to consolidate. And this is really exactly what we're looking for once price actually gets back into our like key areas, is we're always looking for price to come up and then do some type of consolidation where it starts to bounce around this area. And then what we're looking for is just a break to the downside like this. And then on the flip side, if this thing does shoot up and find some bullish momentum, we are going to then look to actually take longs. And remember, this is overall very bullish. So that would be a continuation of the trend. Granted, we haven't had really a crazy pullback, but we have retested the previous high and found some support there. So I do think taking buys on this, like I wouldn't be opposed to taking buys on this position if you were doing DXY. I mean, overall, for me, it just looks like we're still, until we get above the red zone, we're still very much like in a bearish position right here. So this would validate whether this thing, in my opinion, could continue to the upside. I mean, as we know, DXY has been very bullish, for quite some time here, moving up, 20% over the last year and a half or year and a couple months. So overall it is very bullish. We're just at this area, which has rejected several times. So let's just be patient, see if DXY continues the breakout here. But with that in mind, knowing that we have to kind of wait for DXY, let's start to get into some of these other pairs and see what we want to look for. So GU last week, we had gone over this. This is just a continuation. This is an overall very bearish trend, right? So this thing has just been forming these lower lows and lower highs. It's not rocket science, right? Retesting the lows. We just formed this new low right here. So we're basically anticipating another retest of the previous low. So going into last week. And you could also see on the weekly, if you weren't on the call last week, I've got my levels up here at 1.20 and then down here at 1.125. So those are really the key areas I'm looking at from the weekly time frame. Now on the 4-hour, last week we had a breakout of this trend. So this was moving to the downside really nicely, and then we broke to the upside. And I had said we're not looking to actually take sells until we come back up to retest that weekly low. And as you can see, we never actually made it up to retest that level. Instead, we actually just moved to the downside pretty swiftly. And now we're just in this steady kind of 4-hour downtrend. Now, if we wanted to be pretty aggressive with this, like take continuational type trades, we pretty much would just wait for it to retest this point right here. We put stops somewhere in this area, at least 2 to 1, and just be targeting it for it to get down to this next red zone. In my opinion, considering how close we are to this next major area of support, it's very likely that liquidity is going to push down into that area as opposed to coming back up into this area. So considering we just broke support over on the weekly, we're in a downtrend. We're looking to retest and continue a downtrend on the 4-hour. It all lines up to be taking shorts on this. And for this to happen, DXY would obviously have to push. So it would have to go break to the upside. So I would just keep that in mind, when looking at GU. Obviously, GU is going to correlate with the dollar index. So if the dollar index is showing to be very bullish, very strong, then GU is going to most likely start to push to the downside. So I'm looking for GU to continue. I'm just going to delete this trend line that we have here. Pretty much looking for entries up in this area. You could put a limit order in here, or you could just wait for it to actually confirm. But this is a definitely decent trade idea, which is a good start. So last week we went over this trade on USD CAD. So let's go ahead and take a look. So we've been following USD CAD for a bunch of sessions now, and looking at the weekly time frame, we've got our weekly levels marked out. I'm going to go ahead and just delete this lower level. So pretty much what's been going on this is we've just been slowly pushing to the upside, not with crazy momentum, but we have been showing some bullish, buyers are more in control than sellers on the weekly. And then we pretty much had a break of this resistance, this red zone, and then we retested it and then just pushed to the upside. So not to say that I put out a signal or anything like this, but last week, this was the trade idea that was given. Granted, this isn't my exact kind of entry that I would probably take myself. But this is basically the idea was we were waiting for price when it was right around this area to come down back into this red zone, because we were just so close to this area and we knew this is kind of where liquidity was. And then we were looking for it to bounce back up into this area. So I like to look for like actual consolidation, right? And then wait for a break and retest and then take a trade. This thing just literally just tapped the area and then went up, to the upside. So definitely was correct, with the bias and the way that we were looking at this trade. If you were looking at this zone from last week, maybe you did kind of take advantage of this, but this just shows like last week, we definitely had the right direction kind of overall on USD CAD. We were in this 4-hour uptrends. And then again, the weekly kind of correlated with the 4-hour. So in the 4-hour and the weekly correlate, it's really high probability when you're taking those trades. So now that we're up near this red zone, let's go over what should we be looking for next. So as price comes up into this red zone, we could see previously that we've rejected this zone so many times, right? We've rejected this area several times. And on the flip side, we found support here as well, but nothing too major. And I'm sure if we go back a little further, we can find some more support and resistance, right? So this area obviously has shown previously that it's just a major area to be cognizant of. And now that we're coming back into this area, like we're really about to see we're really about to see, in my opinion, like some sort of rejection, right? Because previously it's rejected it several times. We just formed a new high point. There's really normally always a pullback, after forming this new high point. With the dollar, this would mean if I'm coming down to the 4-hour with USD CAD, this would mean that price comes up back into our zone just because this is really where liquidity is sitting that can push it in a bigger direction. And then we would be looking for something pretty much like this. Not to say price will come all the way back down to the red, because remember, we are in this uptrend now. So it could come back just to retest this previous high point. But this is kind of what we're looking at with USD CAD. And if this were to happen, DXY would have to actually go down. DXY would have to break to the downside. So, if DXY pushes, USD CAD will push, and it will most likely do something like this. I'm going to actually use this previous thing right here. So it's most likely going to do something like this, where price pushes up and then ends up pushing to the downside. So it goes like this, comes into the red zone, right? Everyone's faked out, they're trying to take buys, and then it just kind of pushes to the downside. So this is my forecast on USD CAD. I'm just gonna be patient on this. I'm not gonna take shorts now because we're not actually in the liquidity zone that previously has rejected, really well. So we're gonna wait for price to come up there. So nothing crazy on UCAD. Let's come over to NZD USD. So last week we had marked out this red zone, and we were looking for price to come into this zone and then push to the downside. As you can see, it just pushed. So let's just come up to the weekly and see if we could have drew this zone maybe a little bit more accurately. And looking at it now, it looks like we could have actually pushed this down. And what I'm going to base this off of is I'm looking at this area right here, and then I'm looking at this area of support right there. So there's definitely resistance and support sitting in those areas. If we were to go back a bit further, we probably could justify it why it was a bit higher. But we're just going to readjust that. And if we had marked that last week, maybe we would have actually gotten in on this trade a bit earlier. Maybe the opportunity would have presented itself. But that just is what it is. So looking at it now on the weekly time frame, I always start on the weekly and then just work my way down to the lower time frame. So weekly is just clearly in this downtrend, right? Like it's very clean. So we're just at this low point, right? And we don't necessarily want to take sells like aggressively, but at the same time, we want to check the 4 hours, see what the trend's looking like. Ideally, we get a retest back into this zone, or it continues to the downside, and then we get some sort of retest, in this area. So knowing that we're not at a major like low that we can take a trade off of on the weekly time frame, let's just go down to the 4 hour and plot out, where we would actually take a position. So on the 4 hour time frame, if we want to use our fibs, fib this new low that just got formed, pretty much seeing in this area we have some resistance. So I'm going to mark this just with another color. So I'm looking at this previous low point we already rejected right there as well. So if I was going to take like a continuation type trade on NZD USD, I would want to be looking for price in this area, and then I'd pretty much be targeting this previous low right here. I'd be using my fibs to get the next target. I'd have to go up to the weekly and just kind of see like what is the next actual zone. And as you can see, NZD USD has not been this low in quite some time. So looking at this, let's just zoom out. Let's just keep zooming out. So I don't want to go that far back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually utilize this area, because I'm, again, always drawing these weekly zones based on support and resistance. I'm seeing right here that we have some support and we have some resistance. So I'm going to use this as a weekly zone. I'm going to just change this back to red. So coming back here again, on this position, obviously that's pretty far away. So what would I use for my targets? Again, I'd use this as target 1, And then I'd probably just use somewhere in these wicks, just targeting this previous low. But again, there's a lot of room that this thing can obviously fall, and we don't want to just hold this trade for way too long. That's like 400 pips. So I'm going to bring this up here. I'm actually going to just use the fibs. So this could potentially be like a 4-to-1 kind of risk reward trade here. Let's just zoom in a little bit. Again, 4-hour bearish, weekly's bearish. They line up overall. The dollar has been bullish, so continuing to the downside is potentially likely. And we're just using this previous low and kind of this 38.2 area to actually get in on an entry. So that's NZD USD. I'm going to move this one up since we're actually thinking about taking a trade on that one. Next, we're going to come to GJ. So this is a trade that actually was given on the call last week. It was labeled as kind of a more high risk position, but it actually played out pretty decently. So it ended up going up. It went up about 220 pips to the upside. So it was just about like a 2-to-1. On all the swing trades that I give out, and the signals and just in general, I'm always rolling my stop losses, when it hits 1-to-1, or even after that, whether I'm taking some profits, whatever, I'm always rolling the stop loss though when it hits 1-to-1. So I would just personally categorize this as like a break even type trade. As you can see now, this thing has just dove to the downside. So let's come back up to the weekly. And this is why I just love like these weekly levels, is they, not to say they're guaranteed, but like it's just very much showing us that when price comes into these areas that have serious liquidity, that which pushes the market in either direction, it's very likely that we're going to get rejection when we come up into this area. So unless price has some crazy close on the weekly above here with like no wick, the expectation should be that this is going to continue to reject this area. And looking at the 4-hour time frame, we just had this kind of huge rejection here, and now we're breaking into a new low. So what I would look for on this in this time frame and on GJ personally for a swing trade is I would wait for this thing to come back up kind of into this area. Again, you can fib this. I don't use fibs kind of too often, but if you did, this is 38.2 in that area. I'm just more looking at like previous low points. So I see this support level, and I also see this area. So somewhere in this area is ideally where I would want to get on a trade. And then I'm just going to use these levels. So I target this first, I target this area second, this area third, and then you end up with like a huge risk reward trade, or you just move your stop loss up to be a lot more conservative. So GJ, this would be, in my opinion, a great trade to get into. Just a continuation, on the 4-hour time frame, looking at the weekly. This isn't engulfing or anything, but this definitely is some big rejection. And this would have to cover this candle, this previous week's candle, for me to be bullish on this again, which could happen. And if that does, that just means we'll never get rejection in this area. This thing will just push all the way up above the red zone. And then from there, we can kind of see if we get confirmation and start to take buys. But I'm personally trying to take a sell. So GJ looking for the retracement on this one. We already did UCAD, so I'm going to pause there. I see some people in the chat, Nas 100. So I don't trade US 30, so I'm not going to look at that one at all. Seems you guys only, yeah. So OZ, like, honestly, we used to bring on supply and demands. I used to bring on Fibonacci, we use patterns. So we're always using like head and shoulders patterns, flags and pennants and stuff like that. But at this point, I mean, we don't really need to mark a supply and demand zone per se, or bring on the Fibonacci, or, draw 100 lines or whatever. I mean, we've been doing the analysis for years now. So it's actually counterproductive to put all these things on the chart. So I'm just trying to simplify things as much as I possibly can. And for me, it just comes down to weekly time frame, mark down my few levels, trade the trends, like don't overcomplicate, try to trade with the trend. When I'm trading with the trend on both time frames, 4-hour and weekly, maybe I risk a little bit more because it's way more high probability kind of trade. And then whenever I'm entering, it's either enter on a retest or a previous low, enter in this liquidity area, right? Look for like a variation. I just think that you don't need to overcomplicate things. Do you think smart money concept have sense is valid to make a good analysis? I honestly have no idea what smart money concept is.
It's just the new terminology for like institutional trading, essentially. Do you follow like institutional methods?
Yeah. I
Ni-
think when it
yeah,
comes
no.
down to it, like whatever you learn, you literally, it all comes down to your own decisions, right? So if the guy who's doing smart money concepts or people who are having success with smart money concepts, but you're looking at it and you have no idea like what's going on and you just can't pick it up, it's just not, maybe just not like comprehensible or not compatible with kind of the way that you see things. So I would be careful,
Right.
like thinking that one way is like the right way.
Yeah, like don't get me wrong. I've seen some traders be profitable on some crazy shit. Like, you can make things work. People have found success trading, the institutional ways. They've found success with a crap load of indicators. People have found success just trading like how we do, structure, price action, very simple, naked trading. For us, I'm not necessarily gonna, look toward, institutional methods. I'm not gonna implement order flow. I've already tested that stuff. It doesn't fit, me as a trader. It's not what works best for, me. It's pretty much kind of like a self-discovery thing. You got to figure out where, you like to trade, how you like to trade. But one thing I do know for sure is if you're trying to predict the market in any strategy that you're implementing, if you're trying to predict the market, you're really not going to make out well rather than trying to follow the market, right? The market's going to make its moves. You don't know where it's going to go, but you're going to make decisions based on which moves you see. And then that's how you're going to be profitable. You're following rather than predicting.
Yeah, I mean, like the main thing I realize is just look for these liquidity zones where the market's moving with a lot of volatility, and it's just the higher the time frame you look at, kind of the more solid things are. I mean, obviously you can get down into the nitty gritty of lower time frames, and there's tons of strategies to trade the lower time frames, but for me, I'm barely even looking at the charts at this point. So for me, once a week, I could do my analysis. Literally, I'm doing it right here with you guys, and then if I do want to execute on trades, since it's the 4 hour, I could really check like once per day, and like doing that alone, I can get in on maybe 1 or 2 trades a week. And that's good enough for me. I mean, I know some people are trying to trade more frequently, the challenges, some people feel like you need to trade a lot to pass them and stuff like that. So yeah, it just all comes down to what your preference is. But if you find, smart money concepts or I know one person or a lot of people have actually been saying this ICT trader or whatever on YouTube is like really good. I would just try to find somebody who explains things, very, very clear, very simply, because there's not like the Bible of technical analysis, like the secret, like it's all kind of taught fairly similarly. And then it just comes down to you kind of making your own strategy out of what you know, and then back testing it and, forward testing it and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, people think
Yeah,
there's like a
100%.
secret. They think there's like a secret. Like if there was a secret, then like the world would be much different.
Yeah,
Like,
no, there's no secret to it. It's understanding the material. I mean, I think you said it, best just now. You need to find someone who you can understand the material from, someone who you can resonate with, someone who you can, learn from. Because I mean, I've been through or I've listened to a lot of different guys. Some guys are just not great teachers. Some people explain things super simple, and then you can kind of be like, oh, that's the key I was looking for, kind of, to make the next, I guess, rally in your, in your journey, the next step. And then you have another breakthrough, and then you have another like key piece of information that makes something click for you. And it's kind of like always these steps of like realization until you, all of a sudden have your own style and way of trading, and you're finding out what works for you, and now you're in the refining stage and so on. But yeah, no, it's interesting stuff.
yeah, I mean, someone said ICT is like a cult. I'd say anything that seems like it's a cult, stay away. Stay
Yeah,
clear.
right. Yeah, that's never a great. You want a sense of freedom still.
Yeah, yeah. I
Uh,
mean, people that are saying like it's their way or the highway, like do or die, it's just not like reality. Like it's just they're living in this alternative universe.
yeah, exactly.
Everyone like trading is so difficult because of it's all just the psychological aspect of trading.
Right.
like even when it comes down to like you making an EA, right? Like the market conditions are changing inherently because I mean, beyond there's like many things that contribute to that, but overall, like the psychology of least of the retail traders, like it's constantly shifting, constantly changing. The
Oh,
fundamentals,
yeah.
they're constantly changing. Then how people are interpreting those fundamentals and how they're adjusting, whether it's automated trading or it's manually traded, it's mostly automated. Then they're adjusting their automated, and then that's why if like you have an EA, you really got to be adjusting it with the conditions, quite frequently. Like people that are like, oh, set and forget EA, like they're just living in like fucking La La Land. Like,
Yeah, it's the market conditions change. So naturally, right? You have to adapt. The same things that are working a couple years ago aren't the same today.
now I know there's like 1 out of 1 million guys that are like, I haven't touched my EA in 5 months. And it's like, great, good for you, man. But that's not what we're not, that's not the norm. Like, that's not what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, that's like the
So
1% of the
yeah,
1%.
like a 0.01% chance. So yeah, let's go. Mark structure is key. Yeah, so let's get into, I'm gonna cover like 2 more pairs. Nas 100 will be one of them. So last week, with Nas 100, pretty much we were just looking, if we go back to when the market opens last week, which was on about right here. So last week we were just looking for this thing to continue to the upside. There was really nothing to play on Nas 100. I was looking for it to dip up into the red zone. As we could see, it didn't come like exactly that close. Came within, whatever, 0.5%. And then we could see how it reacted, shifted to the downside. So one thing I'm going to do, there was no trade that I personally took on this. I didn't see things that clearly last week, so I wasn't really excited about Nas 100. So one thing I will do now that the market has kind of shown us its hand a little bit is I'm going to just zoom out and I'm going to look at, why did I place that level? And since this is most recent price action, I'm just going to adjust kind of this area to cover this. And I still have these wicks kind of hitting it, these wicks over here, this resistance right here, this resistance right here. So I'm just going to make that adjustment. And then looking to the downside, I have this level, so resistance, support, we have support here, we have support here, right? So we have a ton of things going on in that area, and we're kind of back into that zone. Overall in the weekly, with Nas 100, we've been bearish. This kind of like correlates with Bitcoin a little bit, I hate to say, but things have been pretty bearish since December, and we just formed this like weekly engulfing candle. So it's very high probability to say that this thing could continue to the downside. It's lining up on the 4-hour and the weekly time frame. We just kind of broke this low right here. If we did want to fib it, again, I don't really use the fibs that much, but we have the 38.2 up there. So really, what am I looking for? It's kind of 2 options. We're either looking for rejection right there, which is better because we're in this red zone, which I like to trade in more often than something like this, where it comes up and retests this previous low or lower high. There's still a lot of sellers sitting in this area, like a lot of liquidity sitting in this area, but it's just not as high probability it'll continue to the downside. So this is, in my opinion, 2 of the ideas on Nas 100. And if it breaks this, if it starts to go lower from here, obviously we have a lot of room to push down. This is the previous low point all the way down here. If we start to look left, and start to draw out what is our next actually weekly zone, I personally wouldn't mark anything all the way until we're down kind of in this area, and I'll just adjust it a little bit. So yeah, I really wouldn't take, I wouldn't look for any support really until we actually get down to that area. So we have a huge opportunity potentially lining up, for Nas 100. Now, is there a chance that price just pushes right to the upside, right? I mean, sure. But based on just the trend, we're just trend trading. Based on the trend, based on the zone we're in, this does look like a decently high probability trade. So what about the liquidity void created during the CPI last week? Yeah, so you're saying like this whole gap right here that inevitably people feel as though it will be filled. That's why like what I'm looking for, I'm not going to set like limit orders or anything like that. Really looking to see, does price come into this area, and then this is kind of the last area of resistance. If this obviously breaks this level, this right here, then there's nothing that's going to stop this thing from covering, to your point, this entire area, right? Coming up into this supply zone all the way up here, pushing to the upside. I'm just not waiting for that to happen until it actually, has a lot to prove before this kind of becomes a scenario there. So yeah, let's see. Is there a specific reason you use Global Prime for your analysis? I don't necessarily, let me see if I use it for all of them. Yeah, I think the other ones I use FXCM, and then this one I use Global Prime for NAS 100. I've just been using this one since I started charting it several months ago. But if you guys have any other suggestions for one you guys use, feel free to let me know. Let's see.
I don't think there's much difference in the other one.
Yeah.
I mean,
We got an ICT supporter. ICT is definitely not.
Yeah.
He's got 30 years in the game and his concepts are quite precise, but does take serious study. Yeah, like I said, I've heard a lot of positive feedback about ICT, in the funded trader Discord. I personally don't know anything about it, so that one's definitely up to you guys. But I mean, I'm sure if people are having some success that he's knows what he's talking about. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for my analysis. Last one I'm going to cover, we just always kind of take a look at BTC, look where it's at. It's nothing too exciting. We're just continuing this trend to go to the downside. We just covered, this bullish little push right there that everyone got super excited about. Everyone's like wetting their pants over BTC going up.
This is it.
10%, whatever it is what it is at this point. BTC just covered that previous bullish candle. Looks like we're just going to move kind of more to the downside, but who knows? I mean, we've got the midterm elections coming up, in a couple months. I think the stock market's going to push because of that. And we could see some, liquidity come into BTC as well. Again, just as a reminder, coming over to the market cap of BTC, market cap's only 900 billion, market cap of Apple is like 3 trillion. So whole entire crypto market, super small, guys, a lot of monies to be poured into this sooner than later. So if you guys want to get in, now would be decent time to dollar cost average. And yeah, that's just my opinion. So last chance for y'all to post for the giveaway. So just post on your stories, tag the funded trader or tag Forex League and tag Nick Dark FX. We do have a giveaway going on as well inside of funded traders. So one person is going to win a 400K standard account. Just go into there. The details are in the Discord. It's pinned onto there. And then some other updates for the week. Forex League, we were having a lifetime sale. The lifetime sale is now over. So that ended like 2 days ago. And then for funded trader on Tuesday, we're actually having an AMA. So the AMA is going to be some funded traders are going to come on and they're going to talk about their experiences, with trading. Why are they successful, right? Like they've recently, all the ones that are going to be on are people that recently got payouts. So it's like, how are they winning, amongst, obviously we know a lot of people are not as successful. So how are they winning? How are they doing it? We're going to cover that in the session. It's going to be, I believe it's going to be, let me see. It's going to be at 8 p.m. It's actually going to be on Wednesday. I lied. So it's going to be on Wednesday at 8 p.m. So if you guys are available, hop on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And the last person to tag, so tag Nick Dark FX. That's Nick's page, Nick's Instagram.
Yeah, I'll spell it because there's actually a lot of impersonators. Yeah, there it is. And then Forex League.
What's today?
18th.
So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. So if y'all have any questions, feel free to post. If you're in Forex League, post in that chat. If you guys are in Funded Trader, post in there. And that's it for the analysis. So it'll be posted on YouTube shortly after this, and you guys can watch the replay. And then best of luck, everyone, TFT and the challenges this week. Best of luck to you guys, and thanks everybody for hopping on.
Yeah, good luck, guys. Have a great week. Take care.
Peace out, everybody.